Kathy. Well, good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. I'm glad everybody could join us virtually. And Commissioner, Happy New Year to you, and thanks for joining the call today. As you can see, we have a pretty good turnout, a lot to cover with the Commissioner. I know he's very busy, but he's offered up an hour of his time. So we're going to have, like we did last time, and the Commissioner is no stranger to us. We're going to keep it very informal. We're going to keep it conversational. We're going to cover a lot of topics, but feel free to either enter your comment in the chat box and I'll monitor it, or you could always unmute yourself and ask the Commissioner as we go through the topics. But before I get started, I want to thank our team for helping out. Commissioner, your staff has been great to work with, with getting ready for today. I also want to thank our sponsors too, because without our sponsors, we're proud of the fact that all of our virtual events are free to our members. I'm going to read them out real quick, but you could see that we do have a logo there listing all of our sponsors. But I want to thank K&L Gates, Tyler Aversano and Krantz, GZA Geo Environmental, GEI Consultants, Envision Environmental, Davy Resource Group, Pure Soil Technologies, CSG Law, Groundwater and Environmental Services, Skenk Price Smith and King, Connell Foley, and finally Penn Jersey Environmental Consultants. So again, thanks to our sponsors for today. So we're going to jump right in. And Commissioner, again, appreciate the time. One of the things I know along a lot of people's mind is your Deputy Commissioner, Shawn Moriarty. I think most folks are aware that he'll be leaving the department. So any updates you could share with the Deputy Commissioner spot?
Number one, am loath to lose Mr. Moriarty would be an understatement. For those who sort of don't know the history here, Shawn and I started in the commissioner's office on the same day working for Catherine McCabe, who incidentally I spoke to this weekend. We keep in good touch. She's a dear. And we started at an odd time on a same day, September 2018. Catherine McCabe was actually abroad to be with her daughter during a difficult pregnancy. And so neither of us had the boss to go to on our first day. And he walks into my office and he says, "I think I work for you." And it was, we didn't know each other before, though we were both environmental lawyers by background. But the start of a really, really wonderful partnership. And I'm remiss to even acknowledge the fact that that he'll leave us. So I'm still coming to terms, but we've already begun in anticipation of that departure, and we don't have a firm date on that at the moment. I suspect soon, but we've already begun to move around some of the internal organizational structure. So one of the things that we endeavored on together was to build a more definitive and concerted legal and regulatory affairs unit under Shawn. And as that came together, we then transitioned the leadership of that unit to our chief counsel, chief advisor in our terminology, Paul Stofa. And so as that occurred over the last year or so, Shawn began stepping into a number of other things that may not be visible or as visible to a group like this that is, primarily engaging with DEP in its regulatory sphere. Right? DEP does a lot more than the regulatory sphere. So I think that as Shawn moves on, you'll see a seamless transition, and you'll see more of people who have historically worked for him, but that will now be direct reports to me. So, for example, Paul Stofa, our chief advisor, and then the entire litany of our Office of Legal Affairs, Dispute Resolution, all of which has new leadership over the last year or so. Our chief enforcement officer and the Office of Enforcement Policy will be a direct report to me as well. They all are C-suite executives in their own right, but they've they've come up through Shawn over the last 2 years. But that will settle into that, and I'll name a new deputy whose portfolio will be different from the one you've seen Shawn undertaking. But you'll get to see a lot more of and engage more with Paul Stofa and with Kim Cahal, who is another shining star. She's actually doing a Meet the Regulators thing this week with the State Bar, and she's an absolute star and a pleasure to work with. So I think you'll all get to know her pretty well, and it'll be an adjustment, but one we're ready for. We built the architecture of DEP to withstand these types of changes. Structural change has been a big focus of my time here, and so that I think will pay dividends in seeing a seamless transition.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I should have mentioned that Shawn's been great to work with. I know he's always been responsive. I know he's been out to a few of our events, so I know we're going to miss him as much as you guys are going to miss him. So we wish him well, and it's good to hear that you're already thinking about the restructure. Speaking of restructure, we'll stay on that theme. We did hear that the site remediation program was going to be restructured. I guess they're going to, I guess you're going to divide some, I guess the division of publicly funded versus, privately funded. I guess the question I have, and again, a credit to the department, David Hames has been doing a great job. I know you're very well aware of the Independent Professional Judgment Initiative that was launched about a year ago. We've had a handful of meetings with David and his team. Things are really going well, and I know maybe you could talk about that initiative and the certification. This all ties into folks on the phone, if you're not aware. There's a big push within site remediation to address the remedial action permits and how to expedite some of those permits. Give, again, the licensed site remediation professional more flexibility in moving projects along. Again, a lot of credit to Gwen Zervis. I know she's been spoken of highly from a lot of our members, but anything you could share on that whole site remediation reorg? Because I think there was a question in the chat here, and then talk about maybe that initiative.
Sure.
IP.
Sure. So, one of the things that I care a lot about, because I'm just a very systems oriented person. I care a lot about organizational structure and ensuring that we are set up for success. That we don't adhere to old models either organizationally or as a matter of procedure, just because they exist, but rather evaluating how they are functioning, especially vis-a-vis the change that DEP has undergone, whether that's in the last 15 years of the Site Remediation Reform Act really being in full swing. So you've seen over the last couple of years how we've done a number of reorganizational endeavors, both within and among the media programs, but also the enforcement programs. Sort of each step of that has been pretty strategic. Although if you're not in the wonk of it all every day like I am, you may not see that. But we put together the regulatory apparatus, with air, energy, and materials sustainability to have better cohesion there, kind of bringing the waste out of CSRR to really focus on what I believe its core mission is, which is contaminated site remediation and redevelopment, which is critically important to my mind. And not just because I'm a former redevelopment lawyer, but because we're doing this work with a particular endpoint, first and foremost to protect public health and the environment, but to ensure that we are putting properties that may not be in an economically advantageous position and performing for their communities into such a position. And so our approach to reorganizing CSRR has that as its sort of undergirding policy principle. And so we'll see multiple divisions created within that unit, much like we have in other AC program areas, but has not typically been the case within the former SRP. It had been very large units under unitary management, which emphasizes the management burden upon a director, but and doesn't leave a lot of space for the policy development and improvement if you're spending all your time in that management capacity. And so that's the purpose here. I think Gwen Zervis is an absolute shining star and incredible asset for the department. She's, I think, run our remediation process improvement program, very, very well. And I expect that she'll see that through. And regardless of how the leadership shapes up with respect to who is in these directorships, the remedial process improvement initiative, not IPJ, and we can talk about why that is not a thing, or not that independent professional judgment isn't a thing, it's a thing, but what we're trying to do is improve process and improve outcomes. And regardless of whether Gwen sticks privately or is in publicly, the imperative that we've been sewing together, the work that these committees have been doing, will carry through. Right, regardless, there's not going to be some shift in approach because there's a different individual in the mix, and I expect Gwen to carry this through.
Well, that's great to hear, Commissioner, because I know that's a priority for a lot of our folks for a lot of reasons, but we're happy to hear that. In terms of, and I don't know if maybe this is a question for David Hames or not, but any updates on timelines? And again, I know right before the holidays, the remedial, I guess the RPII had a great meeting, and things are going in the right directions with the certification. I guess they're going to start with the soil first and then groundwater. Any updates or timelines on when that'll be updated or released? Or
yeah, and for those who may not be as deeply engaged as Tony and some who I see on the screen here, the whole thrust of this endeavor is to do I would say three things. Number one is for us to engage in a retrospective on what I believe is the overwhelming success of the LSRP program. Right, we've been in this mode since 2012 effectively, and there has been a lot of great outcomes achieved, right? And to every LSRP on this call, I thank you, right? Because we're moving the cleanup of contaminated sites at a pace and with the degree of thoughtfulness that is necessary, and at a clip that we've never seen before. And we want to lean into that. I want us to lean into that, right? Because what this program was established to do was to rely upon the deep expertise of professionals in this field to serve the public and the environment that we all share. And that's paramount, right? That is absolutely paramount. And assuming that assuming that all of our LSRP colleagues are performing, with that level of professionalism and integrity and thoughtfulness, then the conclusions that they reach deserve our deference, right? Particularly in settings that you've seen explored in the RPII community, in the RPII committees, right, that have materialized the suggested RAP form amendments. And so, there are other instances, of course, where you're in a more complex type of a site where there is variance from tech or administrative code that sort of lean into deference, needs a harder look by DEP, right? But by and large, the goal here is to double down on the expeditious investigation and remediation of contaminated sites. And so my expectation is that by the end of this month, which is next week, that first step with respect to the soil wrap will be out on the street, right? And so
Great.
you'll see
Perfect.
forms completed. There'll be, there'll be a listserv message, and we'll be moving forward. And then we're gonna work on we're already working on the groundwater side. So we'll keep moving in this direction, right?
Great.
And as we move forward in that vein, in this new approach, we're also going to be judicious about how and where we see that referrals to the board are necessary, right? We're gonna lean into that reliance on LSRPs, but where there is concern, we're not going to be shy about moving a referral to the board.
Perfect. Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to switch gears to one of our subjects, and that's the whole A901 dirty dirt. I know, again, Janine McGregor has been great, Paul Baldoff. From last I heard, the rule is either within your office or in the front office. Any updates on when the A901 rule will be out public for comment?
I don't have a specific timeline, but it's at the top of the list. We're moving through the legal review of that rule. I've worked with the team to do the policy review elements where I think that what we'll end up seeing what you'll end up seeing when this hits the street, I hope you feel heard, because many of the issues that have been raised to me by Tony yourself, and for anybody who questions it, Tony is always working for this membership, right? So, always doing it, which I
Appreciate
very
that.
much appreciate.
Yeah.
And so whether the issues that have been routinely raised to me that Shawn has tackled with so many of you over the last year plus, and certainly Janine and team, I think you'll feel seen within that, and heard. And it's a matter right now of getting through the apparatus, right? It's one thing for me to sign off, and then the horde of lawyers at the AG's office is going to sign off, and then the lawyers in the council's office have got to sign off. All these lawyers. I thought
And we have a
never
few.
say that.
We actually have a few on the call today, Commissioners. That's good.
I see some of them. I see Tyler. I see Gail Conanello.
Dennis
I see
Toft.
Mr. Toft.
Yeah. So
I
that's
see
good to know
Nancy
because
Del Pizzo.
yes, I think she was on, or she's on with a camera. But anyway, just for everybody's sake, I know, Commissioner, you and I have had multiple conversations about the whole broker definition, right? And I've talked to Senator Smith. I'm not quite sure what the final details are going to be. I know that there was some recent court cases that you weighed in on. Anything you can enlighten us, because again, trying to assuage a lot of the concerns out there is, okay, if I'm a landscaper, if I'm a non-LSRP, because the LSRPs are exempt, am I going to be captured into this A901 program?
One of the things that I continuously implore our team to do is to sort of go back to first principles and ask ourselves hard questions about what it is that we're intending to do, right? What as the Dirty Dirt Law was fashioned in 2019 were the aims that folks were pointing themselves at. I don't think they were pointing themselves at landscapers, right? So I don't think that we will end up in a place where we've broadened the universe to such a considerable degree that it becomes practically and administratively unworkable. And not because I don't want the DEP to have more work. I mean, it's because we have to be mindful of what it is that we're intending to affect, right? And we're trying to get at here the issue of stockpiles of material that are potentially containing hazardous substances, right? We're not trying to get at everybody's yard. And so, those are two extremes, of course, and there's grades within there, but we're mindful of that, truly.
Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner. And it's good to know. So maybe you think another couple of months where it hits the
Yeah,
register?
I think so. I'd like to see it proposed, certainly by the end of the second quarter.
Okay.
That's my goal. Whether the rest of the apparatus is so aligned, I don't get to control. But I'll be pushy where I need to be.
Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner. I look forward to seeing the final detail. I'm going to mix this up and sprinkle in hopefully some toss-ups here. And I see one of our members, Andrew Ritchell, is on, but I guess electric vehicle charging stations. I know that the department has a program, EV stations. Again, I know Paul has been involved, Peg Hannah. We've had a couple of conversations. The concern that we have, and I don't know if this is a procurement issue or if it's handled out of Treasury or the Department of Law and Public Safety, and then Andrew, if you don't mind jumping in, really at the core here is we have businesses that want to put these EV stations in, but the way that the process is set up for reimbursement, they can't do it unless they get 3 bids and unless the department gets approved or approves the bids, and then the actual work gets done. I learned through Andrew that there's a lot of more detail in terms of electrical upgrades, landscape upgrades. It's complicated. And I know that there's, I guess Peg had mentioned when Andrew and I were on a call that there's a $10 million program. Any updates on the EV charging station reimbursement program? Can it be expedited? And Andrew, if I didn't cover it well, jump in. But any thoughts on that, Commissioner?
So I wouldn't know the details of how the reimbursements work. It would be common for there to be a requirement of multi-bid or multi-estimate when we are issuing public funds, right? And you see that in multiple different programs, right? You see that in the publicly funded program when we step in to do a cleanup or to fund a cleanup where there's an RP who has absconded or there's a homeowner issue. And that's a function of our obligations to ensure best price, best use of public funds. With respect to the details, I wouldn't know, but I think that that Peg Hannah, Melissa Avenego, and many folks in climate monitoring and mitigation they're interested in expeditious deployment, and so I can raise that issue to them because it would be in their DNA to want to ensure rapid deployment. And I know we just received another award out of the federal government, so we'll be expanding that program even more. But there's also multiple other pieces of the EV transition sort of policy regime. It's not so, for a long time it was in a way solely DEP's province, but as both the market has begun to change considerably and new policy from both the feds and the state, you now have a situation where EDA, DEP, and BPU are all playing in that space. And so what we would also want to make sure of is that whatever requirements are being set as a matter of use of public funds available through the DEP apparatus, that it's consistent and with what's required elsewhere. And if there's a way to streamline those respective processes, we should be doing so. So I will absolutely raise it with
I appreciate that,
with
Commissioner.
Peg and Melissa.
And I'll follow up. Andrew?
Yeah, Commissioner, I'm a big proponent of the DEP and protecting our air, water, and land resources in the state of New Jersey. The free bid thing is not something that is the big deal. What is the big deal is from the time an application goes in. I'll give you, for instance, we are twofold. I'm a business owner. I have a building, I have tenants, and I rent space in the building. And I also sell and install electric vehicle charge stations, commercial only. So we applied for our own application. The application, which I've filled out hundreds of applications over my 40 years in business, was probably the toughest application I've ever filled out. And it took from November of 2022 to get the application filled out using people at the DEP that are helpers to fill out applications until May to get it filled out and accepted. But from the time it was accepted in May of 2023, we have gotten notices that things are working, things are working, things are working. And even as of today, the application's been approved, but it's not been approved where we can go out and install our own electric vehicle charge station. So I have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of business of clients of ours waiting because their applications are just sitting. They're getting responses that, hey, we got your application, but you can't do anything until you get our package saying, okay, install it now, go out and buy it, install it now, then send us all the particulars, then ask for reimbursement of the grants. So it is holding up huge amounts of business for us, the installation of charge stations. And I'm a big believer in the win-win-win, the win for the public, the win for the government and distribution of funds, and the installers like me, resellers of the product. I am aware of the new Charge at Work program that was just released. I just got that information this morning, actually, and I was looking at it, but it doesn't give any indication of who are the providers and how does the process work. It looks like it's something from the federal government. It looks great, but it doesn't help me with clients of mine, not on back roads, but on main roads, looking to put charge stations in open to the public and getting, the lines reduced at all the Targets and, Walgreens and things like that have charge stations where cars are just sitting, waiting 30 minutes to get to.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
Andrew, it sounds like we need to sort of follow up offline and get you in a room with some management here at DEP so we can.
I'm a
we can
big
cut through
believer
this.
in win for the state, win for the federal government.
Yeah, and
population.
I'll tell you what, Commissioner, just for sake of time, I'll follow up with you. I also have a call into Eric Brophy at the governor's office on this issue, but appreciate it, Andrew. I want to go back to site remediation if I can, Commissioner, because we got a couple of questions. And one of the topics I was going to tee up is PFAS. And I know a lot of our members care about PFAS. I know the governor signed a couple of bills into law last week, one dealing with foam, firefighting foam, one dealing with the DEP study it. Any updates on PFAS? And one of the questions that was asked, whenever the department, I guess there's an interim soil standard out there, EPA has some groundwater standards. I know there are thousands of PFASs out there. How is it going to impact closed cases? And then I have a separate question. So we could talk about PFAS. And then another question was asked is the next round of extension requests within site remediation, how's the department going to handle them? I don't know which one you want to go with first.
Let's do the extension request piece first. So one of the important points on the extension request is going to be how folks have used the time that's been provided under the previous extensions and the COVID extensions, right? So reasoning behind extension requests are going to have to be really, really, really good, right? Because there was considerable automatic extension and then requested extension. So I think we've got to be really judicious in that respect, but nothing will be unreasonably withheld. So I encourage folks to get with their lawyer, get with your clients, if you're an LSP, get with your lawyers, make sure you're making a really tight case for extension. On PFAS, we've got a number of interrelated, I guess is the best way to describe it, regulatory endeavors. First and foremost, this is not purely, obviously, as folks know, a site remediation imperative, right? What we're trying to do overall, and I think this context may be helpful for folks that are struggling with, PFAS response and management concerns, is what our overriding, policy goal, and I think we're a long way from this goal, is sort of cycle disruption, right? So that we are getting PFAS out of the cycle of its continued perpetuation, right? What are all the points that we can affect that disruption? Some of that is in some of that is in the drinking water world, right? Some of that is in the wastewater world, right? And some of that is in the site remediation world, right? And so, and not to mention landfill closure world, right? So there's a couple of different endeavors that are occurring in each of those buckets. My intent is to knit that together, and we have some early drafts of this under internal review into a bit of a PFAS roadmap for New Jersey, right? EPA has their PFAS roadmap. We're worlds beyond where EPA is, and so our imperatives are a bit different. But at the same time, we're struggling with issues around total destruction, right? Issues with ultimate fate, and those are going to continue to plague us a bit until such time as we are in a place with respect to a number of studies that are being undertaken by the Office of Research and Development at EPA. And I was at EPA headquarters 2 weeks ago-ish, meeting with all of the assistant administrators at EPA around these policy issues, and particularly around concerns that some states have with respect to the listing of PFAS, of certain PFAS as hazardous substances under CERCLA. All of that is to say, I don't see us right now in this moment, going back on reopeners all across the state from a PFAS perspective. In part, not that is not an important point of evaluation for any responsible party who has an ongoing duty of care, or on the part of LSRPs that are getting sites toward closure. But from a management of the overall PFAS policy, from that perspective, the reopener idea is not high on my list, because I'm looking at this from a more immediate impact to public health and environment perspective, right? Where are our levels highest? Right, we have an incredible monitoring network for PFAS in the state of New Jersey, far and beyond what just about every other state has. Although my friends in North Carolina are catching up a bit, but that's where my gut leads me in this direction. This is going to be a long-term management concern, environmental management concern. We're not going to magically snap our fingers and rid it from every site and every media. We've got to prioritize it based on the public health, in the overriding public health impacts, and that leads us mostly to the water space and the water cycle itself, which is why we're leaning in on the for those any here who represent or are part of the wastewater industry. It's why we're leaning in there, so that we can identify significant contribution to hopefully avoid the application of treatment at every publicly owned treatment work in the state, right? So that's sort of just to give you a sense of where my head is at on PFAS. It's less so not that it's not important, but lesser of I think a high priority in a low level site remediation context.
So yeah, I appreciate that. I guess when you were down there, did they talk about, because I think it was about a year ago, they thought about PFAS and Superfund sites. And I think there was a proposal out there, but
Yeah.
there's nothing new on that, right? Or
No. I can share a few updates from that. So I'm very engaged on the national level, because of, so many of the things that EPA is focusing on right now. We've already begun focusing on, or are so consequential to the state of New Jersey that there's just this coalition of a couple of states that are very active on the Hill and very active at EPA headquarters. I expect in this quarter, by the end of this quarter, early next, we're going to see action from EPA on adoption of the CERCLA proposal. Those PFAS will become a hazardous substance. We've been providing EPA some advice and lessons learned relative to the setting of our standards on the site remediation side, because they obviously they're not that far. They've leaned in on the immediacy as well with respect to the establishment of the drinking water standards. I expect those to be established by EPA this quarter as well. So they're and at the same time, I'm expecting ORD to maybe by mid-year have more to share with the states on their total destruction studies.
I think there was a comment in the chat related to PFAS, and I believe M&A is probably natural attenuation. Is the department not allowing it, like as far as attenuation for PFAS?
That's what we're hearing.
I mean, it doesn't attenuate.
It dilutes and disperses though, and that's allowed for in the M&A.
Yeah.
And we're being told not having a discussion. We would appreciate a discussion.
It's a really good
The
point, Kathy.
LSRPA would appreciate this being a discussion, not just an edict. I understand there will need to be some conditions on it, but
Yeah.
we don't like edicts, we like discussions.
I'm pretty sure that edicts come from me, and this
And
one
this-
hasn't made its way up yet.
Thanks, Sean.
So I will definitely circle back on that.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Kathy. Thank you,
Just came to
Commissioner.
our attention yesterday.
So, so just to sum it up, PFAS, I know you're going to look at EPA department again. I know I've talked to Senator Smith, Senator Greenstein's got some bills. The big one is that Forever Chemicals one that we talked about. It's probably going to be reintroduced, so we'll just stay tuned.
It
Just
needs
for
a
sake
lot
of,
of work. It needs a lot of
Yeah.
work.
Right.
And the senators know my opinion on that. I think that's in part why we didn't see it go through in lame duck, and instead they focus on the firefighting foam and take back, and that's good. We've already got a take back program in motion. And then the study bill, we already have that in motion as well. So I do think, particularly Senator Greenstein is very focused on the larger Forever Chemicals bill. There are a number of things that are achievable, that are in that bill. I just have a point of caution about trying to do everything at once. So that's an ongoing point of dialogue between me and Greenstein and Smith.
Well, I appreciate that, Commissioner. Just, we have about 15 minutes left. I know I want to tee up a few topics, so maybe we'll do a speed round. Anything to update folks on NRD or natural resource damages, in case somebody not sure what that is?
Yeah, so I mean, the action under my administrative order from last March has been a little slower than I'd like. But this year it'll be a focus of ours to move forward. Ultimately, here's what I would like to achieve. Ultimately, I would like to get us away from the use of a very litigation heavy approach. I don't think that is the best way for a natural resource manager, which DEP is, to achieve restoration endpoints. And what my goal is to prompt the regulated community, perhaps through audiences like this one, to consider, in the course of their remedial activities, the resolution of natural resource injury, right? And what does that mean? By and large, what I'd like to see from the perspective of the CSRR or the CSRR and ONRR integration is at the point that we are, choosing remedy, that LSRPs, that responsible parties are considering how that relates to the trailing liability that is a natural resource damage. And let's sit down and talk about that and find a way to resolve that so that we could possibly be in a position of having RAOs issued that don't have an NRD carve out, right? That have your complete liability trail addressed. And I think that is achievable. And so we'll be prompting that, this year with some adjustments in, procedurally that invite responsible parties to have that discussion with DEP. Right? Why should anyone sit and wait in a position where, one day the AG may come and file a lawsuit? Let's work on resolving things up front. I find that to be a better process, and that's one that we're going to work over the next 2 years to institutionalize before this administration is over.
Thank you, Commissioner. Switching to floodplain, coastal water rules. I guess there was a question in the chat, but I know you and I talked about. Unfortunately, I know you're obviously prioritized all the problems that we've had with recent floodings. But any updates on the stormwater rule last year first, and then I guess when the coastal rules will come out?
Yeah, so a lot of the applications moving through DEP post adoption of the inland flood protection rule have largely been based on the grandfathering under the old rules. I'll be meeting with staff within the next few weeks on a sampling of matter, a sampling of applications that have come in post adoption of the inland flood protection rule to make sure that we're calibrated correctly and how we are applying that. Then my expectation on the remainder of the real environments and landscapes reform package, which is way more than the coastal flood rule itself, but the coastal flood rule is the piece of it that folks are most sort of most engaged on. I am expecting that to be proposed certainly by the second quarter, if not the first. It's a very large rule proposal, and so the Office of Administrative Law is going to need a lot more time than they typically do to get it in a register. So that is coming. As to we'll get back on the public access rule chain, the rule train as well in sort of the land use rule. And we're going to fix WQMP if it kills me and Katie and Garone.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Commissioner. Any updates on brownfields?
So near and dear to my heart, for many a reason. One of the things that we worked on launching last year, and then open applications through April is an expansion of the Brownfield Development Area Program, and I think that is really important for our regulated community and for our LSRPs to be attentive to and to encourage municipalities where they're doing work to participate and either renew their BDA, expand it, refine it, or add one where there isn't, because it's the gate to so much funding that I want us to move out the door forcefully. At the same time, how we working with Tim Sullivan over at the EDA, we want to make sure that we are leveraging that program with the new brownfields development incentives under the ERA of 2020. So I think that is really important piece of work. So I'd ask you all to share that BDA opportunity, because it is an important one.
Thank you, Commissioner. Real quick, and then I just saw another chat in the box, which I was going to talk to you about. Overall, the stakeholder process. in terms of sharing rule language ahead of time. And I know you and I had this conversation, I guess it was back in the summer. Is that something that the department, in terms of stakeholder process, is willing to do or no?
So I'm kind of confused about this one because I don't know why precise rule language would ever be shared prior to its publication. Concepts, sure, but precise language is odd. That I don't understand why that was ever a thing. It is certainly contrary to the APA, but it's the concepts and the policies that should be the points of engagement and discussion. I would have deliberative process concerns over and waiver concerns over
I mean, it's
language.
And again, I want to make sure because the comments are coming in fast and furious, and I'll start with rebuild by design. Any updates on rebuild by design?
So we broke ground on the alignment that is most upriver on God, that must have been October. So it's got a full head of steam. We're in multi bidding processes, so we're keeping it moving. Same thing, and that's on the Hoboken side, but same thing in the Meadowlands. We've got a number of pieces, the big pieces under construction out in on the Meadowlands side. So moving full head of steam.
And that's the comment, yeah, the Moonachie to Berries Creek. So thank you. I'm going to go to, and I want to make sure we get any clarification with regard to New Jersey recycled content law.
So, oh yeah, this one seems like a Nancy's question.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an interesting one. I can get you an answer to that, Nancy. I don't have it off the top of my head. But if folks aren't aware, there are FAQs put out by the program. I know they've sparked some concern relative to deadlines that are forthcoming in the spring, and what applications for exemption or waiver may need to be necessary. The one point of advice that I'd have is for those that are struggling with that application or distinctions, or a question that the FAQs may not directly answer. Janine McGregor, Seth Heckman would be more than glad to sit down on those discrete items so that folks are getting answers. And Nancy, I can make sure you get a follow up on that.
All right, I'm going to keep going here, Commissioner. Solar panels, recycling of solar panels, universal waste. I know, geez, it seems like probably 4 years ago, I know the governor put together a commission, but any updates on?
So they've got a report that's been,
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
But I guess it needs to be, designated as a universal waste so they could actually be recycled.
Yeah. So, I mean, now the next step, would be to have the re-engagement with the legislature, right? I mean, the sort of litany of the way these endeavors work when Senator Smith and others are requesting sort of the study and evaluation and recommendation. We then sort of move into what would be a legislative change, what would be a regulatory change, and how do we go about doing that? So I think that's the next stage in the discussion relative to solar.
Okay. Let's go to EJ, environmental justice, which we haven't really talked about. I know the rule, I guess it's been final now over a year. How's compliance going? Anything to report on that?
So I think we've received only a handful of applications under the EJ rules since it went into effect. I mean, certainly less than 10, maybe even 5 or less. So remains to be seen. They are all in some form of the initial steps with respect to the generation of the EJIS, the environmental justice impact statement. So it's early days there. I'm keeping an eye on it closely. I want to make sure that it is moving as we intended it to. At the same time, we're trying to bring the matters that have come before the administrative order process to a conclusion. So I've been meeting, so far this month, 3 times with staff on how we sort of expedite those so we can shift the focus to the rule implementation versus the AO.
Thanks. One quick one, hopefully it's a quick one. Any updates on the Hackensack River NPL with EPA?
Yeah, one of the things that I talked about with the regional administrator was doing some public forum where we provide an update there. Much more their endeavor here than ours. And they don't always move as quickly as I would like, but I'm trying to get them to do a public forum to provide updates. I know there's been outreach to some responsible parties from EPA. We don't get involved in that, and for good reason. So it sort of remains to be seen, but I'll continue to push them to have that public forum.
Great. So we're in budget season. I know the governor's going to give his state of the budget, or I should say the budget address, at the end of February. Any comments from your end as far as the DEP's budget, or you want to tee up?
So, of course, I'm never really supposed to get into too much detail on that before I sit down before the legislature. I think a point that's important to reflect on is, throughout the budget process, there's a lot of engagement from many different stakeholders, right? Whether that's, vis-a-vis the stakeholders to the front office, to DEP, to legislators themselves. I think those engagements are important, and that engagement should be had by groups like this at all of those levels, right? Not, if you're telling me that DEP doesn't have enough horses in the stable to move things as quickly as your constituencies and members would like, I know that already, right? Who else needs to know that, and how hard are you going to impress that upon them? I consistently make the point to the treasurer and to the legislature that a well-supported regulatory apparatus that has a positive impact upon economic development and our ability to advance those goals. The more others share that message, the better we are. And do not undervalue the effect that such a message could have coming from groups like this one, as opposed to other stakeholder groups like the ENGOs, right? There's a lot of power in your pulpit that you may not realize you have.
All right, I appreciate that, Commissioner. I look forward to working with you on it. I know we're coming to the close here, but we'd love to get your support on and get your thoughts on sustainable remediation, right? Green remediation. I mean, is that something that the department? I know there's a couple of guidance documents that have been issued, but any thoughts on sustainable remediation and how that might work?
Sustainability can mean so many different things. I suppose I suppose we got to dive into what do we mean by that? Do we mean a remediation process that is less energy intensive? Do we mean a remediation process that is less that's born of less externality in terms of the amount of emissions that the remediation process itself may create? Could mean a lot of different things. I think it's worthwhile to explore. And I also think that NJIT would be a really great partner in doing that.
That's interesting. Okay. All right. We have a couple minutes left. I think we covered a lot, Commissioner, but I want to give our members an opportunity here to unmute yourself if there's a pressing issue or question that we did not cover. Anybody?
Tony,
Yes.
Hi, it's George. How are you?
Good. How you doing, George?
Commissioner, thank you very much. It was very informative. I'm sorry I was 5 minutes late, but I had to go to the gym. At any rate, I had 3 points, but I just want to focus on one of them because of time constraints. The contaminated site and redevelopment program has been hyper-focused on process, which is well needed. But what we don't see is a focus on quality of reviews. As an LSRP, we need 36 hours of continuing education credits. I would submit that you need to focus on continuing education for your reviewers as well. This is an evolving field, and as such, your reviewers may be falling a step behind or two. We've seen this happen often. And I'll just leave it there because I do have some other things. The only other thing I want to say is,
That's a good point, George. I appreciate your sharing that. Thank you.
and the only other thing I want to say is that the permit by certification, it means that we're going to have trouble reemerge in 2 years when we have biennial certs. We have to be very careful not to recreate the problem that we're presently experiencing with the biennial certifications. Thank you, Commissioner. Well done.
Appreciate
Anything
that,
else?
George. Thank you.
Anything else before we adjourn? Okay, if not, Commissioner, thank you for spending an hour with our folks. This has been great. We did record this, so I know we're going to send it out to our members, but look forward to working with you and your team this year, Commissioner. So enjoy the year, and I'm sure I'll be seeing you a lot in Trenton. So thank you, everybody. And thanks again to our sponsors. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Be well.
Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you.